In this life, things are almost never as they seem. In fact, they are almost always the exact opposite of the way we are told. We live in a world of illusion, where all of the guiding forces of our lives are all based on fantasy. Everything in life is a scam, and including large parts of the legal system. I'm intentionally not using the phrase justice system because there is no justice in the legal system. It's just a scam. In Columbus, Ohio, I will make some distinction between the county common pleas court, which handles felonies like murder, rape, and robbery, and the municipal court, which is mostly misdemeanors and traffic. The muni court is a complete and total scam. Just like everything else in this country, all of our policies are about the almighty dollar and making money. The legal/criminal system in this country has nothing to do with public safety. It has nothing to do with guilt or innocence, because these things are completely irrelevant in a criminal case. It has nothing to do with deterrence or proportion or rational public policy. It's all about generating revenue at the point of a gun at the citizen's expense, primarily poor citizens. If you look at the budget for the city of Columbus, you'll find that the municipal court generates almost $20 million every year into the general fund, the majority of it from poor and working class people, by criminalizing everyday human behaviors and profiting from it. Let's start with one of the biggest money-making scams this country has ever produced: drunk driving laws. Just like everything else, this is a fraud and a con job and a scheme to make money. Let me tell you how I came to this conclusion.
It's just a scam.
In 2004, I was convicted and sentenced for DUI for riding my bicycle. The punishment I received was identical as if I were driving a car. I got 72 hours of incarceration. I paid $2,500 in fines and fees. I had my driver's license suspended for 6 months, and that's after spending $1,500 for an attorney. And then I had to spend $400 to get my license back. And of course, DUI laws are progressive. They increase the penalties with each violation. After 4 convictions, you can be charged with a felony, even for riding a bike. This really pisses me off. But as I made my way through the legal process with the help of an attorney, I found out that Ohio's DUI laws apply not only to bicycles, but to golf carts and lawnmowers and even horses, even on your own private property, and to canoes as well. I believed at the time that these vehicles were not the cause of the fatalities on the highways, so there was no rational basis to apply motor vehicle DUI laws to these vehicles. And I filed an appeal on that basis, and I lost. You know, what the hell is going on? The penalties for DUI are extremely harsh. Are bicycles and lawnmowers, canoes and horses really an equivalent threat? I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was doing what law enforcement and groups like MAD would want me to do. And yet I was punished the same as if I were driving a Hummer down the freeway. And now we have checkpoints. In America, we have random checkpoints throwing every constitutional protection out the window, all trying to bust people for a misdemeanor offense. We have forced blood draws. We have alcohol monitoring ankle bracelets. Now they want to put breathalyzers in our cars. You know, based on all of this, it seems apparent that there must be some severe traffic safety problem to provoke these extreme measures. So, as part of my appeal, I looked at the traffic data for Ohio. What I found out was there was no body count from drunken bike riders. And when I say no body count, I mean zero. None. Nada. Zilch. I looked at the data going back 10 years, and there wasn't a single case of someone being killed by a bike rider. And as far as I could find out, nobody had been killed by a golf cart or a lawnmower either. And more than that, I looked at the data for motor vehicles, and I found out that the chances of being killed in any traffic accident were extremely remote. Statistically speaking, nobody dies in traffic accidents. The number one killer, of course, is heart disease, followed by cancer, and then medical attention itself. Vastly more people die from medical malpractice, drug reactions, infections, and complications from diabetes and Alzheimer's and old age than die in traffic accidents. Back in the 70s and the 80s, the United States had only about 215 million people, but we had 45 to 50,000 traffic fatalities every year. Now we have a population of almost 320 million people, and traffic fatalities are around 30,000. The Center for Disease Control estimate that the flu kills around 30,000 people every year. Almost as many people die from the flu than from traffic accidents. Do a quick test. Take a piece of paper or the back of a napkin and list how many people you know who have died from the flu or traffic accidents, and compare that to people you know have died from heart disease or cancer. After I was convicted for riding a bicycle, I became acutely interested in traffic statistics. So I decided to search the internet. And one document that I found really helpful was from the Ohio Department of Public Safety, which you can find on their website or Google it. It's called Ohio Traffic Crash Facts. Now, since I am producing this on video, you can pause right here and go download this, because I'm going to refer to this for the remainder of the video, and I encourage you to download a copy and follow along. But the fact is, driving has never been safer. Not in our lifetimes, not ever. Not since they've been keeping records. Ohio has 8.2 million licensed drivers. In 2015, about 500,000 were involved in accidents, meaning about 94% of the drivers were not involved in any accident. Of course, of the 6% who were, only about half of those are at fault. 3 of the last 6 years, Ohio has set records for lowest fatalities. In 2013, we had less than 1,000 fatalities for the first time ever. So when you see numbers this low, you have to wonder just how dangerous is driving to begin with. Now, I don't want you to just believe me or trust me. I want you to look at this objectively and do your own work. I'm just trying to start a conversation here, but I will show you my work and the numbers I got that have informed my opinion. So the question I had, what are the chances of dying in a car wreck? Now, using Ohio statistics, in 2015, there were 1,110 fatalities in Ohio, and Ohio has 11.5 million people. So, I used a calculator, and I used the following formula to figure out the percentage of Ohioans killed in traffic accidents. I divided the number of fatalities by the number of people times 100. And this is the number I got, which is about 0.1%. Now, Ohio claims about 1/3 of those are alcohol related. As the Bureau of Motor Vehicle expresses it, we have less than 1 fatality for every 100 million vehicle miles traveled. Are you kidding me? You have a 99.99% chance of not dying in a traffic accident. And this is why we have checkpoints? This is why tens of thousands of people in Ohio have to get arrested? We don't have a traffic safety problem at all, let alone a drunk driving problem. You have to watch out. When somebody starts using percentages as a statistic, always ask yourself, a percentage of what? You always hear that alcohol-related accidents account for 1/3 of traffic fatalities. Okay, 1/3 of that 1,000th of 1%. And you know what? Speeding is responsible for 1/3 of the fatalities as well. But if you get caught speeding, you get a ticket. If you get caught with alcohol in your breath, you go to jail. What's the difference? Both of these, along with texting and sexting and general inattention, eating behind the wheel, and putting on makeup, weather conditions, traffic conditions. These are all risk factors, but they are not guarantees that you're going to get in a wreck. Why is drinking and speeding treated differently? Now, if you look at Table 1.01 of Ohio Traffic Crash Facts for 2015, you can see that only about 4.07% of all crashes are determined to be alcohol related. Overall, of total crashes, 74.8% are property damage only. 24.8% are injury accidents. And just 0.36% are fatalities. And that's all from Table 1.01 and using a percentage calculator. Now, to look at drunk driving statistics, you have to go to Chapter 6. I'd start with Chapter 6.08. This is a table of the statistics of alcohol-related accidents for people who have been determined to be at fault. Although total alcohol-related deaths are said to be 346, those impaired drivers who were determined to be at fault are 282. Now, if the person drinking wasn't even at fault, that number shouldn't even be included in drunk driving statistics in the first place. And if you take away those people not at fault, the drunk driving fatality rate dips to 25%. Now, using the number known to be at fault, which is 282, 197 times the person that was killed was themselves, and 48 were their passengers. Now, these deaths are still tragic, but it was their poor judgment that led to the accident. I believe in a free country, you should have the right to be stupid, as long as you don't hurt anybody else. People are allowed to ride motorcycles, which are inherently more dangerous than cars. And some people are killed, yet we still allow that. So what about the innocent victims of drunk driving? In 2015, that number was 37 people out of a state of 11.5 million. And that's for the whole year. That's not just Memorial Day weekend. And not a single one was caused by a bicycle, lawnmower, or a canoe. The overall data in Ohio show that 96% of accidents, 93% of injuries, and 75% of fatalities are the result of sober drivers. But we don't have checkpoints for that. So, I was also wondering how much alcohol we drink in Ohio. Maybe the traffic data is so good because we just don't drink that much alcohol. I tried to look up alcohol sales information in Ohio, and I found out that this is a pretty closely guarded secret, at least based on how difficult it is to find. I couldn't find any numbers doing basic research on the internet, so I started emailing places like the Department of Liquor Control and industry magazines like Ohio Tavern News, and I didn't get any reply. But during my search of the internet, I did find some references to something called the Beer Handbook. And this is published by a company called the Beverage Information Group. I went to their website and looked at some example pages, and it was there. This was the definitive source for alcohol sales information. They had the Beer Handbook and a Wine Handbook and a Liquor Handbook with sales information broken down any way you can think of. But there was one problem. The cost of these publications are $1,000 each. So I emailed them for the information that I wanted, and again, I didn't get any reply. So I started talking to librarians to try and find a copy in a library. And we found a copy of these books in the Cleveland Public Library. So, just so you appreciate the level of effort that I put in for your benefit to bring you this knowledge, I actually drove to Cleveland to get this information. The only problem here, their copy was old, so the numbers I have are from 2010. But I'm sure it's in the ballpark to make my point. So what did I find? According to the Beer Handbook, in 2010, Ohio purchased over 13 million gallons of liquor, over 20 million gallons of wine, and 261 million gallons of beer, for a total of almost 300 million gallons of alcoholic beverages. We go through a shitload of alcohol every year. With these numbers as a backdrop, it's clear we don't have a traffic safety problem. And I say that because the crash data is at or near historic lows. And when you consider the oceans of alcohol we run through our kidneys every year, there is no drunk driving problem either. None. I believe the number one reason the traffic numbers are so good is because people don't like to get in wrecks, and they try and avoid them. Getting involved in a crash is dangerous and expensive, and people do everything they can to make it home safely. And it doesn't matter if you've had 1 beer or 10, or if you're sober, nobody wants to crash their car. So, why all of this hysteria? Why do we have prohibition for 18 to 20-year-olds? Why the clearly unconstitutional practice of checkpoints and the application of OVI laws to bicycles, golf carts, and lawnmowers? Well, I can tell you why. It's because it's a business. And the wider you apply the laws, the more business you have. I did a Google search on the cost of an OVI conviction, and I found an article that was consistent with my own experiences. They found that the average cost of a first-time offense was between $5,000 and $12,000. Now, these costs include lawyer fees, the fines and fees imposed by the court, the cost of an alcohol training course that's often used, and the driver's license reinstatement fees, and so on. So I made a little more effort on your behalf, and I emailed the State Highway Patrol to find out how many OVIs does Ohio have every year. And this time I got a response. According to the Highway Patrol, there were over 37,000 convictions in 2015, and over 15,000 of those had a prior conviction. So, to get a handle on how much money the people of Ohio spend each year on the drunk driving industry, I wanted to start with a very conservative baseline number. So, I took the number of convictions, rounded it down to an even 37,000. And then I didn't consider the 15,000 people with prior convictions. And so let's pretend these are all first-time convictions. And then I used the low-end estimate of the cost of $5,000. So my simple equation was to multiply 37,000 convictions by $5,000. So my very conservative baseline number that Ohioans spend on the drunk driving industry is $185 million a year. Now, if you want to speculate and use the higher number for the cost, or use the number of people with prior offenses, realistically, it's probably closer to $250 million, and that's just in Ohio. And it's a multi-billion-dollar industry nationwide. The problem is, people get hooked on this money. As an example, the state of Ohio uses license reinstatement fees to fund emergency medical services. These are services we need, but we don't want to raise taxes for them. One of the fines I had to pay was called a victim impact fee. These fees go directly to MAD, and of course, all the private companies who are trying to profit off your misfortune. This is why every year there are renewed calls for tougher drunk driving laws, such as lowering the blood alcohol content to 0.05, so they can bring more people into the system. They want expanded use of alcohol monitoring ankle bracelets so they can sell ankle bracelets. They want to put ignition interlocks in cars, starting with first-time offenders, so they can sell interlocks. Now, if you made a list of drunk driving profiteers, at the top would probably be Mothers Against Drunk Driving. MAD is a multi-million-dollar nonprofit. Their 2012 filing showed over $25 million in assets and about $35 million in revenue. That's a total of $60 million. However, MAD is a crappy charity because 58% of its revenue is spent on fundraising and management. In 2014, they spent $9 million on fundraising. And MAD gets the federal government to kick in money for advertising campaigns that they support. For example, the feds spend $29 million annually on the Drive Sober or Get Pulled Over and the Click It or Ticket campaigns. The feds offer a $20 million bribe a year to states that pass all offender interlock laws and to fund research into alcohol education technology. The donors to MAD include a who's who of American industry, including GM, Ford and Chrysler, Allstate Insurance, JP Morgan Chase, and you name it. The point is they are not going away anytime soon. Then there are a host of other companies that are part of the drunk driving industrial complex, like Scram System, who make the ankle bracelets, and about $15 million a year in profits. There are a number of companies in the breathalyzer market, like Alcohawk and Backtrack, and even the LifeLock identity theft people. You have the interlock manufacturers. We hire a ton of cops. And you have the people who run these alcohol programs, along with more DUI attorneys than you can shake a stick at. And you can see that this is a massive industry, but that's all it is. It has nothing to do with public safety at all. But it has ruined the quality of life in this country. When you can get arrested for riding a bike or a golf cart, even on private property, then something is seriously wrong here. And it has absolutely destroyed our legal system and our constitutional protections. Please, everybody, Google the phrase DUI Exception to the Constitution by Lawrence Taylor. Read that and understand how we have systematically destroyed the Bill of Rights over a misdemeanor offense. Remember, this year 99.99% of the population in Ohio will not die in a traffic accident. All of this stuff is just a scam. It's just a scam.
It's just a scam.